The Biophysics of Blood Pressure, Glucose, and Body Weight, a Post-Stroke Perspective Part 1, number 1689, June 18, 2026, Gerald C. EclaireMD Foundation, Category, Biomarkers and Life Trajectory. Preface for readers: eat more protein and fresh vegetables. Eat less red meat and processed food. Reduce portions if overweight. Eating a little less will not hurt you, overeating for yours will. Exercise daily. Walk at least 7,000 to 8,000 steps. Drink 85 to 100 ounces to 0.5 to 3.0 liters of water daily. Sleep 6 to 7 hours each night. Manage stress. Avoid draining people and unnecessary conflicts. Put your health first. Wealth, fame, and power mean little without health and life. Introduction. After my stroke in June 2025, I gradually realized that my way of thinking about health had changed. Before the stroke, much of my attention was focused on traditional metabolic indicators such as body weight, glucose control, diabetes management, kidney disease, and cardiovascular risk. Those factors remain important, and they continue to influence long-term health outcomes. However, the stroke forced me to pay closer attention to a different aspect of physiology: dynamic behavior. As I monitored my health data more closely during recovery, I noticed a pattern that seemed obvious once I saw it, yet few people ever discuss it. Blood pressure, glucose, and body weight do not behave in the same way. They operate on very different time scales. Blood pressure can change within minutes or even seconds. A brief emotional reaction, whether positive or negative, can immediately raise or lower blood pressure. Glucose responds more slowly, typically over intervals of 5 to 15 minutes, influenced by food, exercise, sleep, and hormonal activity. Body weight changes even more slowly, often requiring hours, days, weeks, months, or years to show meaningful movement. This observation reminded me of concepts that many of us learned in physics long ago. Frequency, amplitude, period, oscillation, response time, damping, and control systems are familiar ideas in basic physics. However, I began to wonder whether these same concepts could help explain biological behavior. The more I examined my own data, the more I realized that blood pressure, glucose, and body weight can be viewed as dynamic signals operating at different frequencies within the same physiological system. In physics terms, they are different waves. Blood pressure behaves as a high-frequency variable. Glucose behaves as a medium-frequency variable. Body weight behaves as a low-frequency variable. Each has its own characteristic waveform, amplitude, period, and response speed. What makes this observation particularly important for me is that my stroke appeared to be directly associated not with a gradual metabolic decline, the lower frequency glucose wave, but with an acute episode of mechanical stress, the higher frequency blood pressure wave. Within my personal data framework, a sudden systolic blood pressure (SBP) elevation to approximately 175 mmHg immediately preceded the hemorrhagic stroke. As a result, I began viewing emotional stability, blood pressure stability, and vascular protection as closely connected components of the same system, while continuing to closely monitor my glucose variations. Since glucose acts as the corrosive force affecting my vascular health, this led me to an unexpected conclusion: emotional regulation is not merely a psychological issue for someone with vulnerable blood vessels. It can also be viewed as a physiological and mechanical protection strategy. Emotional steadiness promotes autonomic steadiness. Autonomic steadiness promotes blood pressure steadiness. Blood pressure steadiness reduces mechanical stirs on the vessel wall. From this perspective, maintaining health is not simply about achieving favorable numerical values. It is also about maintaining a stable physiological trajectory over a longer period of time while avoiding acute SBP spikes. In this article, I examine blood pressure, glucose, and body weight through the lens of physics and systems theory. By viewing these variables as interacting signals operating at different frequencies, periods, wavelengths, and time scales, I hope to demonstrate how concepts learned in physics classrooms may provide useful insights into the behavior of real-world human biomedical systems. Body of information. After my stroke, I began to view my body differently. Instead of looking at blood pressure, glucose, and body weight as separate medical measurements, I started seeing them as components of a combined multi-timescale physiological and pathological system. Different biological variables operate at different frequencies, amplitudes, periods, waveforms, and response speeds. Over time, I realized that these variables behave much like interacting components within a physics-based control system. Among these three variables, blood pressure is the fastest changing component. Its characteristic time scale is measured in minutes, and its frequency is high. I have observed that even small emotional changes, such as normal conversation, news watching, emotional stress, sleep conditions, anxiety, frustration, excitement, anticipation, or surprise, can produce immediate changes in blood pressure. The response often occurs within seconds or minutes. Blood pressure also exhibits relatively large short-term oscillations and is closely linked to autonomic nervous system activity because blood pressure responds so rapidly. It is also the most reversible variable. The effects of rest, 4-second inhaling and 8-second exhaling breathing exercises, relaxation, or emotional calming can often be observed within minutes. For someone who has survived a hemorrhagic stroke, blood pressure has become the most sensitive and immediate physiological indicator. Glucose behaves quite differently. It operates on an intermediate time scale measured in 15-minute intervals rather than minutes. Its frequency is lower than blood pressure, and its oscillations are generally smoother. Glucose is influenced by food intake, exercise, sleep quality, illness, medications, and stress hormones. Emotional stress can affect glucose levels, but the effect is indirect and delayed because it occurs through biochemical channels, such as hormonal pathways, rather than direct autonomic nervous system activation. My continuous glucose monitor CGM data clearly demonstrate this slower dynamic behavior. Glucose can be improved through lifestyle modifications, but meaningful changes usually require sustained effort over days, weeks, or months. Therefore, its reversibility can be considered moderate. On the other end of the health spectrum, body weight represents an even slower physiological process. Its characteristic time scale extends from days to months and years, and its frequency is very low. Body weight reflects the accumulated effects of long-term energy balance, metabolic health, dietary habits, physical activity, aging, and lifestyle choices. And like blood pressure or glucose, body weight rarely changes dramatically over short periods. In many ways, body weight behaves like a long-term state variable that stores physiological history. It is also the most difficult variable to reverse because it represents years or decades of accumulated biological adaptation. Changes in body weight require persistence, patience, and time. From a physics perspective, these three variables resemble three different layers of the same control system. Blood pressure represents the fast response component. Glucose represents the intermediate response component. Body weight represents the slow response component. Another way to describe them is blood pressure equals short memory physiology, glucose equals medium memory physiology, body weight equals long memory physiology. These three variables are interconnected, but each operates on its own characteristic time scale. Together they form a hierarchical physiological system containing fast, intermediate, and slow dynamic components. What makes this observation particularly interesting to me is that most people learn concepts such as frequency, amplitude, oscillation, response time, damping, and control systems during their physics education in high school or the first year of college. However, very few people think about applying those same concepts directly to human physiology. When viewed through this lens, blood pressure, glucose, and body weight are not simply medical measurements. They are dynamic signals with different frequencies, amplitudes, periods, and waveforms. They interact with one another while operating on different time scales. This is fundamentally a physics problem occurring inside a biological system. One of the most important realizations after my stroke was that my intervention target naturally shifted. However, after experiencing a hemorrhagic stroke, I came to recognize that the remaining danger is not necessarily chronic metabolic deterioration but acute mechanical stress. Within my own data framework, the stroke was associated with an acute systolic blood pressure elevation to approximately 175 mmHg on June 21, 2025. Therefore, preventing another major blood pressure excursion has become a central objective. This realization changed the way I think about emotional regulation. Emotional stability is no longer merely a psychological issue. It has become a mechanical vascular protection strategy which is directly related to my survival. The sequence is simple and straightforward. Emotional steadiness gives autonomic steadiness gives blood pressure steadiness gives reduced vascular wall stress gives avoid my next stroke. The relationship is direct and immediate. I have also learned that this principle applies not only to negative emotions, but also to intense positive emotions. Most people think only about avoiding anger, fear, frustration, or anxiety after my stroke. I realized that intense excitement, whether from positive or negative sources, enthusiasm, anticipation, or emotional highs, can also elevate blood pressure. Physiologically, the sympathetic nervous system often reacts similarly to both positive and negative emotional stimulation. Both can increase heart rate and blood pressure. This led me to a personal philosophy of maintaining no extreme upside and no extreme downside. An old Chinese saying states, "The middle way is the best way." My objective is not emotional suppression, rather, it is emotional stability. From an engineering perspective, what I am trying to do is minimize system oscillation amplitude. From a control theory perspective, I am attempting to keep the system near a stable operating point with minimal overshoot and undershoot. This way of thinking is highly consistent with my viscoplast topology, energy, and geometry VMT or VPT framework. The body is not simply maintaining a target value. The body is maintaining a trajectory. A smooth glucose curve is beneficial. A smooth body weight trajectory is also beneficial, but for someone with a history of hemorrhagic stroke and vascular calcification, a smooth blood pressure curve may be the most immediately important of all, because blood pressure can change dramatically within minutes and directly alter the mechanical stress placed on blood vessel walls. The three variables are not independent. They are coupled together, but each operates on a different time scale and wavelength. This is very much a physics view of human physiology, where the same system contains slow variables, intermediate variables, and fast variables interacting simultaneously. My post-stroke lifestyle adjustments can therefore be viewed as an effort to dampen the fastest oscillating component of the physiological system, the blood pressure wave. Since this component has the greatest capacity to produce acute damage in a short period of time, maintaining its stability has become one of the most important goals in my continuing recovery journey. Perhaps this is one example of how concepts learned in my high school physics classrooms can provide a deeper understanding of human biophysics. The mathematics may be different, and the biological mechanisms may be more complex, but the underlying principles of frequency, amplitude, oscillation, control, and stability remain surprisingly similar. This is part 1.